Right? This is the 22nd of September, and this is the 64th time we are speaking on the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas. We are coming to the end of the Majjhima Nikaya. Tonight happens to be a very auspicious night. It's the full moon night of September. In fact, it's doubly auspicious. Firstly, tonight in the Chinese calendar, the full moon night of the 8th month, today is the festival, mooncake festival, where Chinese all over the world celebrate by eating the mooncake, and at night all the children go around with lanterns, paper lanterns of different shapes, and with this candle inside it. So that's one reason why it's auspicious. The second reason is this is the last night of the Majjhima Nikaya talks. So for this Vasala, next year hopefully we can do the last of the series. Next year we hope to do the Digha Nikaya and 6 books of the Khuddaka Nikaya. Okay, now we come to Sutta 151. Pindapataparisuddhi Sutta, the purification of alms food. Parisuddhi, you can see, is the utter purification. Just like in the 4th jhana, you have the utter purification of equanimity and sati, recollection or mindfulness. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Then when it was evening, the Venerable Sariputta rose from meditation and went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, he sat down at one side. The Blessed One then said to him, Sariputta, your faculties are clear. The color of your skin is pure and bright. What abiding do you often abide in now, Sariputta? Now, Venerable Sir, I often abide in voidness. Good, Sariputta. Now indeed you often abide in the abiding of a great man, for this is the abiding of a great man, namely voidness. Stop here for a moment. We can see in the previous sutta we read, Majjhima Nikaya 122, the paragraph 6, that's on page 972. We go back to 972. Mahasunyata Sutta, the greater discourse on voidness. In paragraph 6, the Buddha says, however, Ananda, there is this abiding discovered by the Tathagata to enter and abide in voidness internally by giving no attention to all signs. So, abiding in voidness means not giving attention to any sign at all. In other words, it's the signless concentration. It's mentioned in other suttas as the signless concentration, where the mind is void of any nimitta, any sign, any object. This, very few monks can abide in this. The concentration has to be very great and probably have to be an arahant. Now in the commentaries, the Majjhima Nikaya commentaries, he explains this abiding in voidness as the arahant's fruition of voidness. Arahant's fruition of voidness. This is just a comment by later monks. There is no basis for this in the suttas. In the sutta, it's quite clear. It's the signless concentration because there's no attention to any sign at all. So Sariputta, if a monk should wish, may I now often abide in voidness, he should consider thus, on the path by which I went to the village for alms, or in the place where I wandered for alms, or on the path by which I returned from the alms round. Was there any desire, lust, hate, delusion or aversion in my mind regarding forms cognizable by the eye? If by so reviewing he knows thus, on the path by which I went to the village for alms, or in the place where I wandered for alms, or on the path by which I returned from the alms round, there was desire, lust, hate, delusion or aversion in my mind regarding forms cognizable by the eye, then he should make an effort to abandon those evil, unwholesome states. If by reviewing he knows thus, on the path by which I went to the village for alms, and in the place where I wandered for alms, and on the path by which I returned from the alms round, there was no desire, lust, hate, delusion or aversion in my mind regarding forms cognizable by the eye. Then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome states. Again, Sariputta, a monk should consider thus, on the path by which I went to the village for alms, or in the place where I wandered for alms, or on the path by which I returned from the alms round, was there any desire, lust, hate, delusion or aversion in my mind regarding sounds cognizable by the ear, regarding odors cognizable by the nose, regarding flavors cognizable by the tongue, regarding tangibles cognizable by the body, regarding mind objects cognizable by the mind? If by reviewing he knows thus, on the path by which I went to the village for alms, there was desire, lust, hate, delusion or aversion in my mind regarding these sense objects cognizable by the senses, then he should make an effort to abandon those evil, unwholesome states. If by reviewing he knows thus, on the path by which I went to the village for alms, there was no desire, lust, hate, delusion or aversion in my mind regarding sense objects cognizable by the senses, then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome states. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, if a monk wants to abide in voidness, then firstly he has to notice whether when he goes for alms round or coming back, whether there was any desire or hatred or delusion in regard to the six sense objects. And if there is, then these are considered evil, unwholesome states. In other words, the mind is moved by these sense objects. Then he should train himself so that to abandon those evil, unwholesome states until he knows that there is no such lust or aversion or delusion concerning these sense objects. And this is this sometimes you can notice if a person has just started to wear the robes, then he's easily moved by the sense objects. It's not trained enough. For example, we know that men have the habit of looking at a beautiful girl, or women have the habit of looking at a beautiful boy or man. So if this monk goes on alms round, or any man, if he notices a beautiful girl, the eye tends to follow. So it is a habit, probably from many lifetimes. So it's not easy to change your habits. So it needs mindfulness, and it needs understanding of the Dhamma, and it needs a strong mind to even know that your mind is moved. Again, Sariputta, a monk should consider thus. Are the five chords of sensual pleasure abandoned in me? If by reviewing he knows thus, the five chords of sensual pleasure are not abandoned in me, then he should make an effort to abandon those five chords of sensual pleasure. But if by reviewing he knows thus, the five chords of sensual pleasure are abandoned in me, then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome states. Stop here for a moment. So this is the second step. The first step is to guard his sense doors, to notice whether he is moved by sense objects. Now the second step is to abandon the five chords of pleasure. That means not to indulge in beautiful forms, beautiful sounds, smells, tastes and touch. In other words, giving up worldly pleasure altogether. Unless a person is very serious about the Dhamma, it is a normal worldly person is not likely to give up the five chords of sensual pleasure. Because most people think, what is life without enjoyment, without pleasure, without happiness? So worldly people, they indulge in worldly happiness, but the Buddha says that's only because they don't know of a higher happiness. People on the holy path, on the spiritual path, they want to indulge in a higher kind of happiness, a more permanent type of happiness, a type of happiness that does not give you suffering. Worldly happiness, we indulge in it, the end result is suffering. Because once you indulge in worldly happiness, you tend to crave for it, you tend to attach to it, and then when it goes away or it changes, then you can't stand it and you suffer. So this giving up of the five chords of sensual pleasure is quite a drastic step for worldly people. Unless you are totally committed to the spiritual path, you are not likely to take this step of abandoning sensual pleasure. Again, Sariputta, a monk should consider thus: are the five hindrances abandoned in me? If by reviewing he knows thus, the five hindrances are not abandoned in me, then he should make an effort to abandon those five hindrances. But if by reviewing he knows thus, the five hindrances are abandoned in me, then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome states. Stop here for a moment. The five hindrances are abandoned when a person is just about to enter the first jhana. So you can say that the condition for abandoning the five hindrances is to attain at least the first jhana. And this a normal person will not attain, as just now we mentioned. Firstly, that person has to be totally committed to the holy path, the spiritual path, and then only he abandons the five chords of pleasure. He does not want to indulge in any worldly pleasure. And then he practices meditation, and if the conditions are right, and he attains the first jhana, then only he can abandon the five hindrances. So, you see here, abandoning the five hindrances and attaining the jhanas is very much a part of the spiritual path, the holy path of the Buddha. Not like what later monks say, that jhana is not important, jhana is not necessary and all that. Here it's quite obvious that it is a necessary condition. Again, Sariputta, a monk should consider thus: are the five aggregates of attachment fully understood by me? If by reviewing he knows thus, the five aggregates of attachment are fully understood by me, then he should make an effort to If he knows that the five aggregates of attachment are not fully understood by me, then he should make an effort to fully understand those five aggregates of attachment. But if by reviewing he knows thus, the five aggregates of attachment are fully understood by me, then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome states. Stop here for a moment. So you see, this fully understanding the five aggregates is after abandoning the five hindrances. Only after you have abandoned the five hindrances, then the Buddha says, then you can see things as they really are. Yatta Buddha Jnana Darsana. Then when you can see things as they really are, then when you practice vipassana or contemplation of the five aggregates, then you can understand the five aggregates as impermanent, as a source of suffering, and it is not fit to be regarded as this is mine, this I am, this is myself, as the Buddha says. So, if we know that the five aggregates are impermanent, as the other day the sutta says, you can see the rise and fall of the five aggregates, the appearance and the disappearance of the five aggregates. Just about 2 weeks ago, we had one lady here come for retreat, and she started coming here only recently because the son passed away. She had 2 sons. One is about 23 years old. The younger son is only 9 years old, and suddenly passed away. And she could not take it. So she came here for retreat. So imagine somebody you love so much, this young boy, this lady gave birth to her, and suddenly she appeared in her life. After 9 years, she just died and disappeared altogether from her life. No trace. So life is like that. About 25 years ago, when I was a new monk in Thailand, we were staying in this this forest monastery. And then these villages, these Thai villages, when somebody passes away, they will bring the corpse to the wat, to the monastery, and burn it there, cremate it there, because in the village in Thailand, they don't have these electric burners, gas burners and all that. It's an old-fashioned way. So I saw them bring this old lady and just passed away, wrapped up in cloth, but you can see her face. Then they put her on top of this pile of branches that they had collected. And then they brought more of this wood piled on top of her. And then the monks poured, I'm not sure whether they poured petrol or they poured kerosene or what, and then they lighted it. And then there was a big fire, very big fire, and burned the corpse completely. But they had to wait many hours until the next morning before it was cool enough to go and collect the bones. So it's very striking, One moment you see this old lady there, few hours later, completely disappeared, no trace of her. So it strikes you that life is so impermanent. One moment you see somebody, another moment that person passes away, and the 4 elements return to the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and no trace at all. For a few years there is the memory. After some time, even the memory also is gone. So it's good to see this type of cremation. It becomes strikes you how a person suddenly is there, suddenly is disappeared altogether. And you can see the nature of the 5 aggregates. Due to conditions, they arise, and you need sustaining conditions to keep the body alive, the body and the mind. And when the conditions are not sufficient, then this being dies. The 5 aggregates just fall apart. So because of that, the Buddha says the 5 aggregates are suffering, and what is impermanent is suffering, and something that is impermanent, suffering, bound to change. It's not fit to cling to it as I and mine. If you cling to it as I and mine, you're only asking for pain and suffering. Whether you like it or not, you still have to let go. Just like this lady, the son died. If she doesn't stop crying until all the tears are dried also, it will never come back again. Never come back. So we just have to accept now. There's no other choice. Life is this way. Life is painful. Again, Sariputta, a monk should consider thus. Are the four Satipatthanas or the four intense states of mindfulness developed in me? If by reviewing he knows thus, the four intense states of mindfulness are not developed in me, then he should make an effort to develop those four intense states of mindfulness. But if by reviewing he knows thus, the four intense states of mindfulness are developed in me, then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome states. Again, Sariputta, a monk should consider thus, are the four right kinds of striving or the four right efforts developed in me? Are the four bases for psychic power developed in me? Are the five faculties developed in me? Are the five powers developed in me? Are the seven enlightenment factors developed in me? Is the noble eightfold path developed in me? Are samatha and vipassana, stilling of the mind and contemplation developed in me? If by reviewing he knows thus, samatha and vipassana are not developed in me, then he should make an effort to develop them. But if by reviewing he knows thus, samatha and vipassana, or tranquility and contemplation, are developed in me, then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome states. Stop here for a moment. So here, this part is talking about the Noble Eightfold Path. So a monk should consider how much of the Noble Eightfold Path he has developed. And if it's not complete, then he has to make further effort to completely develop the Noble Eightfold Path. And when the Noble Eightfold Path is fully developed, then the four Satipatthanas will have been fully developed, and the four Samappadhana will have been fully developed, and the four Iddhipada, and the five Indriya, and the five Bala, and the seven Bojjhanga, all these would have been fully developed. And then Samatha and Vipassana will occur, as mentioned in the previous sutta, will naturally occur in this person who has developed fully the Noble Eightfold Path. Again, Sariputta, a monk should consider thus. I'll stop here for a moment, going back to this one. So, I'd like you to see again, the Buddha says, all these have to be developed. The four Satipatthana, the four Samappadhana, the four Iddhipada, etc. In other words, the 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma. As I mentioned the previous night, that you cannot just practice the four Satipatthana without practicing the others. Okay, I was just saying that you cannot just want to develop the four Satipatthana by itself without the others, the other Bodhipakya Dhamma. You have to develop all the four Satipatthana, the four Iddhipada, the four Samappadhana, the five Indriya, five Bala, seven Bojjhanga, and the Noble Eightfold Path. And when that occurs, when that happens, the Noble Path is fully developed, then Samatha and Vipassana, this monk will automatically possess both Samatha and Vipassana. Again, Sariputta, a monk should consider thus, are true knowledge and liberation realized by me? If by reviewing he knows thus, true knowledge and liberation are not realized by me, then he should make an effort to realize true knowledge and liberation. But if by reviewing he knows thus, true knowledge and liberation are realized by me, then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome states. Sariputta, whatever recluses and Brahmins in the past have purified their alms food, have all done so by repeatedly reviewing thus. Whatever recluses and Brahmins in the future will purify their alms food, will all do so by repeatedly reviewing thus. Whatever recluses and Brahmins in the present are purifying their alms food, all are all doing so by repeatedly reviewing thus. Therefore, Sariputta, you should train thus. We will purify our alms food by repeatedly reviewing thus. That is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Sariputta was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So you can see from here that the Buddha says to purify our alms food, that means to make for a monk, to make the livelihood very pure, then he has to practice the Noble Eightfold Path until he has attained liberation. Then he will have completely purified his alms food. In other words, he will deserve every little bit of food that he gets. It's one of the names for the Arahant is in Chinese is Yin Gong. Yin Gong is worthy of offerings. So if the monk has completely finished his work, completely developed the Noble Eightfold Path and become liberated, then he is worthy of all offerings. So you can see here, this Buddha says that when a monk goes for alms round or coming back from alms round, not only on alms round, whenever he can remember, he should review his progress on the holy path. Firstly, he should check, as in paragraph 3, Buddha says he should check himself whether paragraph 3 to 8, whether he is guarding his six sense doors, whether he's moved by external sense objects. He should not be moved by external sense objects. And he should be careful to abandon evil, unwholesome states of mind. Then after that, he has to abandon the 5 causes of sensual pleasure, totally give up enjoyment of forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and touch. And then by giving up the 5 causes of sensual pleasure, then his mind becomes more and more tranquil because he does not look for pleasure. That is the way to attain the jhanas. So when he attains the jhanas, the 5 hindrances are abandoned. And after attaining the jhanas, then when he practices vipassana or contemplation of the 5 aggregates of attachment, then he can fully understand the 5 aggregates of attachment as being impermanent, as being a source of suffering, as being subject to conditions, subject to change, and not fit or not worthwhile to regard as this is mine, this I am, this is myself. In other words, I and mine. So after that, he has to develop the Noble Eightfold Path fully. And when he develops the Noble Eightfold Path fully, then all the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas are developed, consisting of the 4 Satipatthana, the 4 Samappadana, the 4 Iddhipada, the 5 Indriya, the 5 Bala, 7 Bojjhanga, and the Noble Eightfold Path. And when that happens, then he automatically possesses samatha and vipassana, tranquility and contemplation. And then that will lead, if he practices in the right way, that will lead to true knowledge and liberation. So this is the way the Buddha is saying that a monk should train to purify his livelihood, purify his alms food. In other words, to be worthy of the gifts of lay people.